Welcome to our next virtual summit. My name is Nicoletta Polano. I'm a senior compliance professional at Zurich Group, and I'm based in Zurich, Switzerland. I am the next external connection lead and the organizer of this summit. Today, I will be the moderator of this event dedicated to the future of work, our fifth event of this next summit. The session will be organized as follows. Each speaker will give a keynote, and then we will open the floor for the discussion. To post your questions and comments, please enter them in the Q&A chat. I will pick them up and pass them to the speakers. I will then wrap up the session and seize the opportunity to present you contents and speakers of our last event this afternoon. Now, let me introduce you to the speakers of this event. Simona Scarpaleggia, CEO at Edge, board member at Autogrill and Hornbach, in business for 40 years in human resources, general management and CEO positions. Former country manager at IKEA Switzerland and global head of the future of our work at INGKA Group. Strong advocate for gender equality, co-founder of Valore D in Italy and Advance in Switzerland. Former co-chair of the United Nations High-Level Panel for Women Economic Empowerment. Kristin Holter, Global Head of HR Transformation and ad interim Group Head of Sustainability at Zurich. She held previous roles in HR, organization and change management in Deloitte, Bacardi and Philip Morris International. Kristin is helping Zurich to craft a strategic and sustainable response to the future of work. Nadia Younes, Group Head of Employee Experience, Diversity and Inclusion and Wellbeing at Zurich. Former Chief Innovation and Inclusion Officer at Edge Strategy. Nadia worked across sectors such as theater, biotech, banking, mining, academia, gender equality, and international finance. Passionate about building innovative and inclusive communities inside and outside of the workplace. After having introduced to you the speakers today, I leave the floor to our first one. Kristin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nicoletta, for that super introduction. I'm delighted to be here to talk about the future of work today. So, we call it the future of work, but I think we all know by now that it's now. It's not the future, it's today. So I have a question for everyone to get us into the mode of thinking about this is, how much do you think your role is going to change in the next 2 years? Is that 5%? Is that 20%? Is it more? I mean, we all know that our roles are changing and we need to prepare for that, right? By updating the skills that we have today in order to be the right skills for roles in the future. So choose a percentage of how much your role will change in the next 2 years and just write it down. So in terms of an answer to that, obviously it does depend on your role, but I can share with you some kind of across the board predictions. So according to the World Economic Forum, in 2 years, 35% of the skills workers need today will change. And according to Deloitte, the half-life of skills is now 2 years. So in 2 years, that really valuable skill that you gained is really only half as valuable as it was when you first learned it. And the really shocking thing is, both of those predictions were pre-COVID. And of course, what we've seen as a result of COVID is a massive acceleration in some of the factors that are driving these changes, right? Like digitalization and the adoption of various technologies, such as automation and AI. So those predictions are really now completely understated. So take a look at the number you wrote down, and if it was anything under 35%, then I would invite you to consider whether you are not sufficiently aware of what's coming. If it's between 35 and 50, then I'd say, you could probably be on the right track. And if it's over 50%, I would venture to guess that maybe you're in a highly impacted role and you already know that. This awareness, the degree to which we are realistic about future risks to our employability, it's really of paramount importance, given that, it's kind of the first step. And without this awareness, people don't take the necessary actions to protect their future employability. One of the impacts of COVID is that it's really heightened society's overall risk awareness. So if pre-COVID, we were happy to be a little bit oblivious, then I think COVID has increased how we perceive the proximity of potential risks to our employability. But actually, according to some research that Zurich has conducted with Oxford University, those workers whose roles are most impacted are frequently the least aware of these changes. So we saw a correlation between your role being at risk and your lack of awareness of that fact. But as I mentioned, a kind of across the board risk awareness has increased. And that's actually really great because it provides the perfect platform for us to build, reskilling and upskilling solutions so that we can help people retain their employability and relevance for the future. At Zurich, we're actually going through our own very ambitious digitalization journey. And as a part of this, back in 2019, we made our own commitments to our employees about hiring internally over externally, about supporting insourcing rather than outsourcing, and about supporting our employees to reskill and upskill into roles that are more future-proofed and less at risk of automation. So we really believe that there's an obligation and a responsibility on the part of both the employee and the employer. And I think there's an additional element to consider here, which is the role of ecosystems, right? And that a solution cannot be found by one person alone or one organization alone if we're really to have an impact at scale. So let me give you an example of what kind of partnerships across a wider ecosystem could look like. Here at Zurich, we have a number of hiring strategies focused on youth employment, one of which is apprenticeships. And the idea with an apprenticeship is that you earn while you learn. So at the end of your apprenticeship, you have both a degree and a job. However, it's really hard to establish apprenticeship programs. It takes financial investment, partnership with local universities, you have to develop a curriculum, file for certification, and that's why often it's only the really, larger companies who have apprenticeships. So Zurich North America and Zurich Spain, we were able to partner across the insurance sector to establish a sector-wide apprenticeship program. So for example, in Spain, where the youth unemployment rate exceeds 40%, Zurich was able to take on 6 apprentices in our first year, and we're taking another 6 again this year. But if you take into account all of the insurance companies who are now using this apprenticeship program that we established across the entire sector, we have already 44 students who have graduated, and 85% of them were offered a permanent role in the insurance company where they held their apprenticeship. So that's just 6 if we do it alone, or 44 if we partner across that wider ecosystem. So I just wanted to give an example of the importance of building scale and the importance of collaborating across an ecosystem. So I'll end on this topic of youth employment, because while many segments of the workforce are heavily impacted by COVID, youth unemployment levels are rising faster than all the other segments. It's a little bit comparable to the last global financial crisis, where the impact of the recession was felt severely amongst youth. Many were unable to secure an entry-level role, and the impact for some was that they failed to build the foundational skills, they couldn't find the roles, and ultimately they suffered greater long-term issues and remained kind of poorer than other generations for the rest of their lives. So I really want to conclude on this idea of responsibility on the part of the employer, on the part of employees, on the part of partnering with the wider ecosystem, and all of us having to play our role in preparing for the future of work. And actively embrace that role. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kristin, for your keynote. So now the floor to Nadia for hers.
Hi, thanks so much. And so I want to piggyback on some of the things that Kristin spoke about, but I want to talk a little bit about the power of disruption, because I think we're used to thinking of disruptions as being negative things and chaotic things, and certainly COVID has been an incredible disruptor that I think initially when COVID started, the vernacular and the way people were talking about it just 6-7 months ago, which now feels like a very long time for many people, is that this might be over, that this is that by now we would be through it. And I think people are starting to realize that this is going to be a longer term disruptor and we need to watch what's happening in this. But there's been other disruptors in the world of work, and flexible working is actually one thing that I think has enabled us historically and will enable us in the future to actually handle any of the disruptions that may come our way. And I want to talk a little bit more about that. But before I go a little bit deeper into the future of flexible work, this topic is really around the future of work, right? So it's yet to be seen the full impact that COVID is going to have on the future of work, but there are societal trends that could come out of this in terms of how we use gig workers, different types of work, how we organize work. Kristin talked about the need for this collaboration and to do work differently in terms of the collective intelligence that we can tap not only inside our organizations, but outside our organizations. Who do we collaborate with? Who are our partners? These things are all changing as we look to address global challenges. And excuse me, at Zurich, we've talked a lot about being the most socially responsible or one of the most socially responsible companies on the planet, not just in our sector. And so that's going to require us to look at our risk orientation. We bring as an industry, we bring a risk orientation that is smart and informed, but that risk orientation is shifting to more of an opportunity orientation. The risks that we are having and the disruptions that we're having due to COVID and other disruptions really present us with a lot of opportunities. And there have been some historical challenges in the workplace in terms of who's included, the types of experience workers have in the workplace. These challenges have been addressed over time, and COVID is giving us a real opportunity to address these in creative ways. So yet to be seen the full COVID impact of what it is. But I think although there's a lot of fatigue out there, there's also a lot of ripeness for innovation. And in our own vernacular around what could go right, even in the middle of this fatigue and COVID, I think innovation can go right, flexible working can go right, and employees and customers, if we talk about really ensuring that they have a wow experience and that they're really engaged, what does that mean in this disruption of and how can flexible work help? So I want to shift a little bit to the future of work as it's related to flexible working. And I want to clarify, when we talk about flexible work, we're not only talking about remote work. Right now, we're talking about remote work as flexible work, almost as a synonym, because of the situation we're in with COVID. And I would say we have to kind of think of this as flexible working while in COVID. So we're working flexibly to stay healthy and safe and maintain business and keep delivering, excuse me, in terms of business. But the future of flex goes beyond only remote working, right? And so there's lots of opportunities for flexible working to help us creatively think about how might we redesign work so that we're not tweaking at the margins around flexible working. If we use COVID as an opportunity to really innovate around flexible work in a way that gives both employees and customers a wow experience. We connect it to the business, we connect it to the experience that we want to have as employees to contribute, and to the purpose of our organization around sustainability, climate impact, being socially responsible. Flexible working can play a role in all of that, but it can't do it alone. So we can't tweak the margins of flexible working and say, oh, you used to work 1 day a week from home, now we're going to let you work 2. That would not be a good response to the opportunity flexible work gives us. We have to think about how can flexible working drive innovation. Flexible working is really about where, when, and how we work, not just where we work. And so in COVID, we're talking about where we work. And I know that there's a lot of conversation about having a lot more flexibility about where we work. And the ideas on working from anywhere are exciting, and the devil's in the details, because excuse me, the laws haven't caught up with this idea that we could just work from anywhere. Right now, in this current moment, that's often not realistic because of putting you could put a company at if you set up legal entities someplace, or there's tax issues, or there's all sorts of devil in the detail local considerations that countries have to manage. But the idea, the disruptor of working more broadly from different locations, from different places, is there. And the laws are quickly changing in this space around how we, excuse me, organize work about where it's done. When we work, we've seen with remote working in the pandemic, there's been a lot of talk around how productivity has increased. I think some of that talk has largely been, we don't know exactly where those productivity increases are coming from. And in jobs where you can measure productivity clearly in terms of things done, knowledge workers, it's a bit harder to get clear definitions of productivity. And in many cases, the productivity measures that people are saying we've seen an uptick in, is it because people are just working more hours? Now that there's no boundary between home and work life, are you filling in your commute day and end with work, and that's causing productivity to go up? That may or may not be sustainable. So I think from the future of flexible working, in order to allow us to really be innovative and really work well in a new way of working, is to not only look at where we work, but when and how we work. And in the how we work together, there were other areas of opportunity to improve always before COVID. So having clear roles and responsibilities, having clear priorities, empowering people to make decisions so that the decision tree in an organization doesn't take, too many people and too long. If we export the way we worked in the office pre-COVID to the way we're working remotely now, will that suffice? Or will we need to significantly shift how we work? We know at Zurich, we found out certainly that we see everyone is working remotely to stay safe. There is some stress associated with that. There's some fatigue associated with that. There is a disproportionate impact to women associated with that, because we still, as women, predominantly take care of home and work and day job, day shift, night shift, the caring responsibilities. For those men in the audience that are equal partners in this, bravo and yay, because I think we need to support everyone sharing the responsibilities of caregiving if we're going to have remote working or flexible working really work for everybody. So when we start thinking about the intersection, if you will, of what's the employee experience across demography that's shifting, across geographies that are shifting, what happens when urban centers, if the disruption of urban centers means central offices start turning into hubs or different things, how do we respond as an organization to that? So I think the future of work really will require us to shift from to use our risk strengths and our risk analysis strength to focus it on opportunity and what could go right, and focus it on innovation. And from a flex standpoint, really considering where do we need to be consistent about where, when, and how we work, and where can we be creative? Where can we play with new ways of working to benefit the customer experience. And that will require really listening to the employees and the countries and following what's shifting in how cities are organizing themselves and the laws that are governing around where, when, and how we work. So I would like to throw out to the group to think post-pandemic. When we think future of work, we need to think post-pandemic, but we also really need to consider that the pandemic will have disruptions, and how will we respond? How will we turn those disruptions into real opportunities? And so from a flexible working standpoint, I think the tectonic plates are shifting, and we can't tweak at the margins about how we used to do flex and make minor little changes. I think we need to think more broadly about how flexible working can actually help our business and help our employees and help us deliver much better services and delivery to our customers. So I'll leave that there at the intersection of diversity, inclusion, and well-being. But my last comment is that when we talk about flexible working, I think remote working is being talked about as being, we need to watch out for mental health issues coming around with all this working remotely. And I don't think it's the remote working that's causing mental health issues, it's how we're working remotely. So I think we need to find better ways and to work in this new environment and not just transfer the way we always worked in the office to our virtual way of working. We're going to have to significantly shift how we collaborate and how we work together in a virtual world. And that involves both employees, managers, and leaders upskilling, setting clear priorities, and empowering more employees to make decisions at the point of decision. So future shifts ahead, but really interesting time to be looking at the work around flexible working.
Thank you very much, Nadia, for your keynote. So now the floor to the last keynote. Simona, the stage is yours. Then we will move into the discussion.
Thank you very much and good morning. Well, it has been very interesting listening to both Kristin and Nadia, and I will try to build on what they were saying. First of all, yes, the future of work is already happening, and the only thing that I can add is that it will change faster and faster going forward. So we need to equip ourselves in a different way. And we see everywhere, as individuals, our lives have been digitalized. Companies are introducing digitalization as one of the main chapters of their strategic agenda. So many changes are already happening. And I would like to describe the new world of work as what I call a 3D world of work. And the first D stays, of course, for digitalization. And this digitalization is unstoppable and inevitable, and it will bring a lot of benefits. Things will be done faster, cheaper, better, so it's almost a no-brainer to adopt some digital solutions. However, it brings also some threats. Such as, all the implications that automatization, digitalization has on employment, such as the threat to personal privacy, or, for instance, all the theme around the data security, just to name a few. So we need to take that into consideration. And as it has been said, the pandemic has even worked as an enhancer and accelerator of this phenomena. Take working from home, you have both talked about it extensively. Take the e-commerce that has completely changed and disrupted entire supply chains. So it's happening massively and fast. The second D stays for destructured. What I mean is that we all will pursue effectiveness and impact over efficiency, because efficiency will be already granted and delivered by automation and digitalization. So our focus will be more the effectiveness, and this requires that all of us will have to unlearn and relearn and observe what is happening and adapt with agility our knowledge to what is needed. Therefore, the pyramidal organization, it's over. It's already getting obsolete. To get the work done today, and it has to be done fast and facing these unexpected changes, it requires us to employ creativity and autonomy. And these humans are quite brilliant, I would say. So we pull people into project using what it is needed, when it is needed most, and we don't do as we did before, that we stockpiled resources, materials and information. So teams will aggregate, deliver what they have to deliver, disaggregate and work for other projects. If I can use a metaphor, these organizational structures going forward will look much more as the inside of a pomegranate. So an irregular spongy system with permeable membranes where, in these rooms, which are the task force, are positioned this juicy seed that are their people with their knowledge. In fact, startups, the entertainment companies and tech companies are already working this way since some time. The third D stays for diverse, of course, and we more and more have to think about differences as forms of talents. We have to value what comes from a diverse workforce. That is a workforce of, at this point, solution finders who are able to connect the dots that are delivered by the machines, that bring their value and competence from different walk of lives. And as it was said by Kristin and Nadia, these people will even be working from different places, possibly from different countries. So it's a completely different way of dealing with people and with teams. In this context, I would like to say there is an intervention that is pivotal to reset our economic, social and political life, and it is gender equality. Because gender equality has an enormous scope, it impacts half of humanity and half of the workforce and goes across all other dimensions of diversity and impacting many fields. In this matter, I would like to flag a couple of alibis or fake news, let's say. And first and foremost, I want to flag that it is not because of digitalization that women will be even more excluded because they're not qualified enough, or because their jobs are those who will disappear first. This is only partially true and mostly fake, I would say. In fact, it is because of digitalization that companies will have to upskill and reskill the entire workforce. Hence, it is an opportunity to even the representation of men and women in the organization by providing both men and women with the competence that is needed. It's a golden opportunity to balance the workforce in companies. And measurement will allow to identify the gaps, to make proper plans and to follow up on the results. So with these 3 Ds in the world of work, I think that there is a key aspect that we have to consider, and it is leadership. We will not go back to how we worked before. Why should we? We see also the advantages, and those who will be out of competition. But it will be our choice how to get those benefits of the transformation, and also how to face the risks. The technology part, to be very honest, I believe is the least complex, because we see the technology is more and more user friendly. We have seen how we have adapted soon. What is more important is the psychological part and the cultural part, and leaders here play a very important role. In fact, while implementing the changes in technology, we should always have people in mind. What will become of them? What effect will this transformation have on their lives and on the lives of their families? What will this in turn trigger within society? How will consumers see companies adopting their digitalization and transformation and value it in a positive or negative way? And this is valid very much for leaders, but for employees as well. I believe that the answers to these questions are purpose and are embedded in purpose and trust. Psychology underlines that the importance for the individuals of living with a purpose and values and building relationships. And basically for the work, people want to work for good companies and companies they believe in. So I would say leadership in this transforming world of work have a very important role. The great opportunities that are ahead of us allow to free up space for people to bring their creativity, to bring their humanity, and also this valuable imperfection that trigger innovation. Leaders have the role to make those choices, to put people in the first place, and to deliver a good business that is basically having a good and positive impact on the lives of human beings. So the responsibility to lead by example and take the choices is in the hands and in the hearts and in the minds of the leaders. And I think that we will create a better place of this world if we approach it with this transformational leadership. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nadia, Simona, and Kristin, for your inspiring keynotes. We have a lot of questions in the chat, so I will try my best also to merge them and pass them to you speakers. So I will start with a question for Kristin first. So it's a question around intergenerational coexistence at work. So you touch base about our programs within Zurich for apprentices, but you also touch base about upskilling, reskilling, and also let's say the topic of an aging workforce. So we have the, let's say, unprecedented possibility to have 4 or even 5 generations at work at the same time. So what are your thoughts around that? So how can we size this amazing opportunity and build a sense of belonging for the new joiners, so for the Generation Z or even younger, but also how can we keep engagement for baby boomers as well? So I guess there's no one size fits all program for everybody, but what are your thoughts about that? So what are the opportunities and challenges?
Thank you very much, Nicoletta. Yeah, absolutely. We will have 5 generations in the workforce for the first time ever. And there are definitely opportunities in that. And I think I would like to frame that around what Simona just said in terms of differences as forms of talent, right? So different segments of the workforce bring different things to the fore. And, you know, maybe we also need to think about it in terms of complementarities. So we mentioned a minute ago that COVID has impacted different segments of the workforce, such as youth, heavily. But also what's happening is that our aging workforce are now having to work longer in order to have the pension that they need, right? Because their pensions have been impacted by COVID. And so they maybe need solutions around, for example, working part-time for a continued period that they hadn't foreseen, rather than just from one day to the next, you know, going from working full-time 60-hour weeks to nothing at all. And so is there an opportunity to say combine these 2 needs into solutions where you have an older workforce who are maybe working part-time, who are helping to onboard our focus on youth employment? So if you think about it, if you have your first job in the times of COVID, that might be really difficult in terms of figuring out, just general onboarding and integration in the workforce. You have never had to, build those foundational skills before. So is there some kind of pairing that we could do between older generations and our new youth just coming into the workforce now? There's a lot of other different ways we could think about multi-generation working together, but I definitely think that there are forms of talent across all these generations that we should combine in productive ways.
If I could piggyback on that a bit as well, Kristin, because you brought up a good point. I think the mindset shift around generations also has to change. There's a bit of a mindset around how mature you have to be on the earlier side of the career in order to have to kind of know the work environment. And there's also a bit of an expiration date mindset sometimes as people get older and they're in the workplace, that these stereotypes that they are not up with technology, or they can't learn new things, or stereotypes around the younger generations that they want everything quickly and that they're not willing to do the hard work. I think the mindset needs to shift along with these very intentional ways, like phased retirement approaches. I don't know anybody that's gotten phased retirement perfectly right and aligned it with knowledge transfer and really been intentional and thoughtful around how we would design work with the generation's strengths and opportunities in mind. But the cultural mindset shifts and stereotype shifts around generations also, I think, need to be addressed, and those are sometimes harder to change. In the language we use and the assumptions we make about younger workers and older workers that actually get in the way of doing this 5 generations, having 5 generations tap the collective intelligence and ways of working, because that's an incredible source of opportunity for organizations that I think mindsets can get in the way of really tapping that source.
Thank you very much. Nadia, actually stay with us because I have a couple of questions from the audience directly to you. So one is around how can we prevent going right back into the old days of working when things will calm down? So how can we make this change permanent? And how can we stop saying, oh, when we will go back to normal? So what is the new normal that we need to build, and how we can prevent ourselves to have, let's say the feeling of willing to go back to our comfort zone?
Yeah, this is a really good question, and I wish I had the panacea answer for that. But I think when people say the new normal, we're living this now. We're creating this now. We're going to have to be very agile and adaptable as things change and resist the urge to knee-jerk go back to the way everything was before. Because I think if we want to go back to the way everything was before, or like I said before, just tweak a little bit at the margins of how we did flex before, we'll miss a tremendous opportunity. And to piggyback a little bit on what Simona said around the role and responsibility of leadership, I mean, I think leaders have a real opportunity to take a look at where should we be able to learn from this COVID experience and actually look very intentionally at the good and bad habits. That if they say it takes about 3 months to form a habit. Now, we've been working under COVID situations for 6 or 7 months. So we have, whether we like it or not, developed some new working habits, some of which might be great for the organization and some of which might not be so great. And so I think we need to look intentionally at what kind of habits have we built around how we meet, how we collaborate, how we transfer knowledge, how we set goals, how transparent we are, how we coach and develop employees. We've developed some new ways of working around that unintentionally because of COVID. I think we need to do it intentionally because of COVID. We have a real opportunity to learn from the habits we've been developing and listen to our own employees and customers around the habits they want us to develop. So if employees want us to develop the habit of working more flexibly, more fluidly, then we need to frame that conversation around, that's great, you want more control over where, when, and how you work. How can that help the business? How can that help your teams? How can it help drive innovation? We need to have very intentional discussions so that they're not just around, well, I like this way and this suits me, and so I want to do it this way for me. I think we have to have really good conversations around building new habits together that have the kind of impact that we want them to have on our workforce and on our customers. And I think flexible working with intention. How will we design how we flex intentionally in the future? Where should we have a consistent employee experience, and where is it fine for the countries and for employees to decide? I think there will be more employee drive in this space that leaders will have to listen to, because the world's shifting in who decides how much flex, where, when, and where, and how do we get work done. And we need to develop, we need to take a good look. So one habit, and I'll close this answer to this question, because flexibility needs to be flexible. One size is never going to fit all, but I think we could look at things like, how are we managing our 24-hour workday? We're in all time zones, right? How do we manage that? Flexible working could actually allow us to actually deliver work and deliver product and services to our customers in far more efficient ways, using the 24-hour clock and where we're located, if we organize our work and we think differently about it, rather than just having employees just work longer at the beginning and end of their days. We have to think about creating these new intentional habits where flexible working helps the business, helps customers, and helps employees.
Thank you very much, Nadia, for your thorough answer that actually answers a couple of questions that we have in the chat.
I saw that.
Thank you very much. Now we have a couple of questions for Simona. So she told us about the 3 Ds. So we have a couple of questions around the D for leadership, the structured leadership, and diversity. In particular, there's one that I would like to focus around leadership. So our audience is asking for Zurich, but we can make it in general. Companies nowadays, how companies can really focus on building and enhancing those capabilities for leadership, and how companies can support the leaders to build skills and be genuine in their strengths, recognizing and nurturing the strengths within the company, but focusing also more at the moment on the digital transformation. So how companies can better equip the leaders within their organization to be ready and prepared for the future of work.
Thank you very much for this question, which in fact touches a key point around leadership. Companies. So first of all, let me say humanity has progressed because we learned over centuries and thousands of years. We learned and we progressed. So also in this case, we will progress because we learn from what is happening and how we solved problems. So also, I think that going back, there's no going back. This one is not a parenthesis and then we go back and we do exactly as we did before. We learn if we take the opportunity to improve the things that we already knew it didn't work. I talk about environment, I talk about the inequalities. There are many things that we can tackle with this new spirit. So leaders as well, they are called to contribute to this change by being closer and closer to their people, by enhancing their listening skills, as it has been said, by what I strongly believe is unleashing a feminine aspect of leadership, which also men have, is not only women, which is about caring, sharing and embracing, meaning caring for real about people and about the business, because the two things go hand in hand, is not either or. Sharing information, experience, and embracing all the differences and the problems that come up and trying to solve them together. Collaboration, enhancing collaboration will be another important ability that is required to leaders. And this brings me to what kind of investments can also do companies to support these leaders. I see that a lot of effort and so the most advanced companies, let's say, are continuing to invest in upskilling and reskilling the employees when it comes to all the digital capabilities, which is also, of course, very important. And this will create a competitive advantage for these companies, because those who, for some reasons, don't consider this as a cost and not as an investment will be left behind. However, the investment on leadership is not strong enough. I met different representatives of different companies, and it is somehow underestimated how the development of these soft skills that will be crucial for a strong leadership are somehow considered as a nice to have, or something that individuals will autonomously develop. So individuals will do their part, but I think a sort of support from companies is requested. We live sometimes in companies with this super high pressure given by the technological transformation, the orientation to short term, the pressure to deliver in a quarter. Those who are on the stock market, they need to deliver every quarter, and this pressure is wrongly so, I believe, sometimes only focused on how to fix things technologically. Even the learning, we have experimented, and many companies are doing it, experimented learning online, which is very good. I am a supporter, and with modules so that people can pick and choose what they need for the moment. This is super bad, and these modules last between 15 and 30 minutes, so it's super effective. And there are topics that are solved much better this way, and I'm totally supportive, but there are some aspects. You cannot become a leader in 15 minutes. You cannot understand people in 15 minutes, module online. It doesn't work like that. We humans have a time for engagement, a time for connection that will then capitalize positively all the rest. So companies should see that this kind of investment on their leaders more holistically, and devote the right time to discuss and engage and create awareness and create a new self-confidence. I mean, when I joined business, it was really 40 years ago. The expectation from a leader was to know more than the others in the organization or in the function, and to give direction and to give almost orders sometimes. So the expectation was, you know it all and you tell us what to do. Impossible to do this today, no? The leader knows a fraction of what the collective team knows and can deliver. So how to deal with that? It's a huge change, but of course it misplaces your self-confidence. Oh my God, if I don't know this, and how can I respond? This passes through the minds of leaders often. So we need to make everybody aware that it is okay that you don't know everything. And that it is okay that we find solutions together. Leadership is more about giving inspiration, giving trust, supporting people who have different reactions and different times, and they're appreciating and valuing the many differences. It's a completely different set of skills.
Thank you very much, Simona, for trying to squeeze a unique answer with many questions that I brought you. We have time for a last question for Kristin before we wrap up. So I'm trying to squeeze here as well a couple of questions for you. So one question was around training. So now it's pretty common, the model of 70-20-10. So what is in general your view or Zurich view, or what is best practice in the market about this training? Because we see a lot that a lot of training nowadays is, and education in general is mostly on the job. So what are your ideas around training? And also another question was around, is the future of work going to lead us more, not with a hierarchical way of working, but more of a project-based way of working?
Thank you very much, Nicoletta. So in terms of the learning component of it, I absolutely completely agree with the 70-20-10. And we see that very much in Zurich already, being that we have really focused a lot on work-based learning. So we have a lot of talent mobility solutions in our different BUs and functions that are allowing people to work 20% of their time in another role as a developmental experience, for example. And we're also starting to measure that, right? So we're starting to measure things like, you know, how many, like talent mobility, be that for project-based and temporary roles, or indeed just internal hiring over external hiring. So this on-the-job experience is critical to the learning journey. There's also a place for the learning that Simona just described, for example, could be found online in this very modular fashion. And again, at Zurich, we have prioritized that by introducing My Development, which is a combination of 16,000 leading edge courses, as well as our technical academies. So we've provided the content, and in many cases, we've also provided the time to do that learning. So not across the board, but in discrete places, they are dedicating a day a month, or they are implementing deal hours. Deal hours are drop everything and learn, right? So you as a team decide that these are going to be your deal hours. So you dedicate that time to learning. So I think for all of us on the call, the question around learning, right, to ask yourself is, are you learning today in your job? Are you learning something? Are you increasing your skills and capabilities? And the answer to that needs to be yes. Right? And if it's not yes, then you need to figure out how you can put yourself in the position that you are building your skills. To your question on, are we going towards a more project-based organization? Again, Simona touched on this, and she described moving from the pyramid to the pomegranate, which I just loved as a visual for anyone who's cut a pomegranate and looked at it. And there are other companies out there who are far more progressive than we are on that topic, right? And so in Zurich, you can clearly see pyramids still. However, we also see a much more project-based approach springing up with the talent mobility that I've just described, but also with sort of, agile or human-centered type of working, springing up in an organic manner from BUs and functions. So I think we have to wait and see how that matures. It's definitely out there in parts of our organization, and we need to watch how that progresses over time to see if we really do move from a pyramid to a pomegranate or somewhere in between.
Thank you very much, Kristin, for your very thorough and comprehensive answer on two very big and complicated and complex topics. So I think we are towards the end of this session. I will briefly wrap up the key takeaways that Nadia, Kristin, and Simona shared with us today. So Kristin started around intergenerational coexistence, and she highlighted the fact that we have 5 generations in the workplace at the moment. So what are the opportunities and challenges to size that? In particular, considering that we have very young new joiners, but we also have part of the workforce that is aging. So how can we keep everybody engaged and within a sense of belonging? She touched base just right now around learning and talent mobility. So we have many opportunities to learn at our own pace, and she posed us a very good question. Are you learning? If you're not, you need to put yourself in the condition to do that. Because, for example, within Zurich, we have many tools to do that, especially online. So we should seize that opportunity. Nadia touched base around flexibility. So she put the emphasis on not only on the where, because we are speaking a lot about work from home, work from anywhere. So around the where piece of the conversation, but she emphasized that we need to put the emphasis on the when and on the how as well, that they are as much as important as the where, or if even more important. And she touched base around the concept of empowerment, so the importance of empowerment of the employees and the workforce, and she touched base also on the point of the mental health. Simona summarized very briefly into 3 pillars, so leadership, diversity, and digitalization. We touched base on that, and in particular on the leadership one, she gave us very good tips how we can make our leaders more equipped for the future of work, and she touched base also on the impacts of let's say the current situation from an angle of diversity. So thank you very much to our speakers for being with us today, and thank you very much for the inspiring and insightful conversation that we had. And thank you very much to the audience that was with us and the very good questions that you posed to our speakers. Allow me to share with you just very briefly the last event that we have within our summit. So as you can see on the screen, this was the 5th event that we had, and this afternoon we will have the last event of our summit that is focused on future of society. We will have our very own Siwan Lu, the CEO of Zurich Insurance Mobility Solutions, and we will have 2 external speakers on the panel as well. One is Ronnie Abergel, the CEO of the Human Library Organization, and the 3rd speaker is Bill Kearney, business school professor and entrepreneur. So they will tell us more about the future of our society. So thank you very much for being with us today. You can always replay this event today using the same link, and please let us know at next@zurich.com your feedback, and if you have any comment, please let us know what you're thinking. Have a good day, everybody, or evening according to your locations.